Yesterday I worked on quite a few trees and we filmed about 3 of them, and after filming I carried on working. So I counted that I did 8 of these trees in 1 hour. So this is the next stage of refining it. So these trees look like this after working. So the basic principle is to get a conical shape, branches in the right place. Sometimes these younger shoots which you think shouldn't be there, they are being left there because I want to use them as sacrificials even if they are small. So there are 8. This is another one. So it just shows what we're doing. This is a nice leaning style. Thought I'd show you this one. So they're all being what we call refined, and I've got a few more here. So what do I have still to do? I still have quite a few more to do. Sometimes I have to change the front, remove the wires. This was done last year, but I may redo this. So all these have to be done. So there are another 12 or so. But what I wanted to show you are the more difficult ones. There are 3 or 4 which are particularly difficult. So let us, as I say, bite the bullet and tackle the difficult ones. This is a difficult one, and you can see why it is difficult. It is difficult because it is absolutely straight, dead straight, with no movement, no line. So when you get a tree like that, you wonder what can you do, you know? Is there another front we can use? So this I would call a problem tree. So because it is so straight, I don't like doing literati. Many people consider literati as the easy way out. I think bending the branches like that may improve it a little bit. So that is one option, doing it like that. But the other option would be to make it a shorter tree and give that twist to this branch and make this the leader. So this is also possible. So you see, every problem, as I remind you, has more than one solution. So I have the option of either bending this branch down like so. Let me prop the tree up a little bit, because if it were to be planted again, if it's planted at a slight tilt, oh, I can't get it to tilt properly. And these can be sacrificials to thicken the trunk, but the trunk is getting nice and craggy already. So this is what comes with age. You cannot speed this up. What other options are there? Making it a really short tree like that, that may be a bit too drastic. That is what we call a handlebar branch, like a handlebar of a bicycle, which many people regard as a fault, but don't worry. Sometimes it doesn't need to be regarded as a fault. It can be used to good effect. So I have a problem here, either to keep it a bigger tree. What's going through my mind is if I make this the leader, I still have this problem of the handlebar branch. But if the handlebar branches are bent down, it may not look so bad. Let me do that for a start. I don't look too far ahead. I look just one step at a time and see what the solution turns out to be. So let's wire that one and see what the result is. When I wire, make sure there's enough wire to go to this and this. So I don't do like that. You see, you end up short there. So all these little things I do automatically, but when you're new to bonsai, it's worth looking at it to see and plan ahead what you're doing and how you're wiring. Again, the 2-branch principle. Forgive me if I keep repeating these very basics, because most of the viewers of my channel are beginners, and it's nice to get good habits when you're beginning in this hobby. Now you must be asking, why didn't I wire the bottom branches to begin with? I didn't, because I just want to test this theory to see if I can keep the handlebar branch. I'm convinced that if I bend it down, the handlebar problem will be resolved to a large extent. Okay, by bending it down, it doesn't become so much of a handlebar. It's quite nice. You see, you could live with that. These, don't forget, may end up as branches, but they'll be kept as sacrificials to thicken the trunk. Now I can still consider whether I take the tree up like that to make that the new leader with that twist, or make this a branch coming down and keeping it a taller tree, like so. So there's so many options. Okay, because this is very stiff, let me just split the trunk. And let's see what happens if I split the trunk. Will I be able to get more of a bend? So this is how I think all the time, considering all the various options. Again, I don't work like some people do, because there are some people who insist on drawing a plan and a design for the tree, and they'll force the tree to go into that shape or design. Okay, it may work for them, but I prefer the freedom of letting the tree evolve in its design as we go along. And that's far more exciting. So I've split it just into two parts, so that means splitting it right down the middle. Even this one, which is thinner than a biro pen, can be split, makes it a bit easier to wire. And when this heals over, it'll give it that craggy effect. So see, it should become easier to bend. Now let me use some really thick wire and see what happens. Okay, now because I want to bend this part, I've got to get an anchor for this wire. So I can either anchor it and wire the whole trunk, or if I didn't want to do that, I can probably only anchor it to this first branch here. So always remember that the two-branch principle is just for providing anchor, nothing more. Now, how did I get that this wire would go to the very end? And this is only a second-hand piece of wire, reused wire. Now let's see if it bends. If it doesn't bend, I'll put another wire. If it cracks, just believe that I intended it to crack. No, jokes aside, sometimes they can crack. Some pines are quite brittle, some are flexible. I've got some bend there. A trunk which was formerly absolutely straight, I managed to bend. Now let me bend this down as well. Now this one I'll use yet another piece of wire. This can go here. Okay. Now I'm going to take the wire up here from here. I've got to work out which is the best route, because I've got to get the wire parallel. So planning the route or the journey of this wire is quite important, so that I get a neat appearance. Need to try and get it straight like that. That looks neater. And again, with wiring, the more you practice, the better you get at it. In some countries where they don't get wire, I'm sure you can get ordinary aluminum wire, which is used for construction and engineering. You don't have to have bonsai wire, but stick with aluminum wire if you can. Although it's very frustrating not to have proper bonsai wire. I keep recalling the days back in even the early 80s. Bonsai wire was very difficult to get. So I'm trying to make the tree look less gangly. Now, I'm trying to give more of a bend there. Hope it won't break. See, I've got a curve there now. And now this, which was going up like that, why continue to let it grow upwards? Let me take it down here and see how it behaves like this. See, so I've now made it a shorter tree. See, I've now made it a much shorter tree. And I can then wire these. And there you go. So that tree is finished. Let me just get one more piece of wire. Second piece of wire will do. Okay, so this is still the front. I will bring this down to make a crown. There you are. So that tree is looking like that. And I hope the editor can show a before and compare it with this. So I've got more of a curve and a more compact tree. So that is that one done. Now let's look at another very tricky one. So this is the second one this morning. And this, again, is what I would call a problem tree. And it's a problem tree, look at it. It's got a lovely craggy trunk because this is quite an old tree. These I would reckon to be at least 20-year-old. And I've been training these for the last 7-8 years. Constantly cutting, you know, the main leaders were cut and then the side branches grown up. So not all trees are perfect. So this is one of the, what we call imperfect ones. What are the faults on this tree? Handlebar branch there. This is too straight. This was chopped off there. There's a bend there. I know that if I can tilt it, I might get some solution to the tree. I haven't studied these trees before, so I'm looking at it fresh. So I'm just talking aloud, going through the process, my mindset or the analytical process that is going through my mind. So my first thing is that how can I make that an asset rather than a liability? I know that I can bend it a little bit, give it more angular shape that way. Literati tree, this is too thick and then the transition is too abrupt. This is thick and then suddenly gets thin. So that's another problem. So let us see what we can do. As I say, not all problems are insoluble. Every problem can be solved. Every problem can be solved. So I've just stumbled across something. If you look at this tree here now, that and that is okay. If I can get rid of that somehow or hide that, that doesn't become so much of a problem. And then we can deal with this. I have to keep turning the tree around all the time to see where there is a possible solution. See, that's interesting like that. If I bend it there, shorten the tree. But this transition here is the problem. Yes, for thick to thin is hell of a problem. As I say, we are not working on these major specimens or near specimen trees. We are just working on simple trees that you and I, as ordinary bonsai hobbyists, will encounter very frequently. So the thinking process is the hardest process. Once you find the solution, it'll be very quick. You know, chop, 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 and it'll be there. But getting to the stage before you chop, that is the tricky part. That is the hardest part. So I'm still trying to work out a solution which will make it look interesting. I can see a line here. I'm always looking for a line. As long as the trunk or the line is not straight, that generates interest. That becomes interesting. You see, I've created more of an angular shape by doing that. And then by doing that. Let's turn it around this way and see what happens there. That's also possible. Okay, that is possible, you see. I can make that the leader, that a branch, shorten the tree, so I've got that shape, and that can go as a back branch. Right, let's go for that. But I'm also thinking of a bit of a radical solution, because I haven't done anything really radical so far. And what do you mean by radical, you might well ask. The radical thing is that I might well split it over there to make it more of a better taper. So what I mean is like this. I should bring my Chinese cleaver. I don't think I need the cleaver. It may put people off. I know I'm eating roast duck tonight, but I don't want to be chopping a branch and then cutting my roast duck at the same time. So I'm just splitting it so that I can tear the branch outwards. See what I've done? I've opened it out like that. So let's see if I can get something from that. Make it easier to bend. Okay. Well, let's start by this. I'm not going to remove any branch if I can help it. The reason being, it may give me an option for the future, and also it helps to thicken the trunk. This business of the sacrificial, I can't emphasize enough. Sacrificials are very important, especially in our situation where we are developing our own trees. Time is important, and sacrificials help to reduce the time. Okay, let's begin by wiring branches. Wire everything in sight, and then we will see what happens. Okay, I've got to plan ahead because I can straight away see if I can wire these two as a pair, and then I can wire this and this as two branch. So I always think ahead. I'm thinking of wiring these two and then these two. So I was going to link these two, but I said no, I will link this and this. So I'm going to link this and this. So there's always some element of foresight. That means you're looking ahead. The way I start is, as long as you get a first anchor, then you can go to the next branch and do the whole thing. These needles you can pluck. These are second-year needles. They would eventually fall, but if I pluck it, again, it encourages back budding. I won't take it right to the end. Keep it there. And with the gin pliers, you notice that the two most used tools in doing these black pine is just the Felco secateurs and my gin pliers. Gin pliers very useful to terminate the wire. This is 3.5 or 4 mil wire, I think, and it's very hard to handle it with the fingers. So the gin pliers very useful to do this sort of thing. Okay, I haven't yet decided which is the front. I know roughly which is the front, but I'm keeping an open mind. I'm doing a zigzag to shorten the branch. Okay, now let's turn to this side. Okay, now I'm going to wire these two and I'm going to wire these two. So I'm just trying to think, should I wire this first or should I wire this first? Perhaps I should wire this first because this may need to be pulled out, but if I wire this and that, it may trap this one. So I'm going to do this and this first. So let's see where we go. Get the right grade of wire. So this is 4 mil wire I'm using, 4 millimeter. So I'm going to do this and that. See, I'm just seeing how long the wire is. I have enough to go there. I have enough to go here. So the placing of the wire is quite important as well. So I've given an anchor there. Now I will proceed to go up here. I don't know whether to go around the trunk that way. See, that gives a neater, slightly neater appearance. Okay, so that's one. Now I'm going to wire these two before I do anything else. Okay, I've got the anchor there now. So I still can't visualize the final shape. I have a very rough idea as to what the final shape or configuration of the tree is going to be, but I haven't planned it. I'm just going to let it evolve. Now I'm going to see if this opens out a little bit and help the taper. Okay. So can I use this as a branch and do that? No, that wouldn't look so nice. If I use this as the leader and bring this down, that might work. So this looks as if it could be used from many sides as the front. This is also a possible front. So I'm keeping on turning it to see what will work, what won't work. That might work. See, it's got quite a nice line there. So let's try that. A lot of it is trial and error. Let's see if I have a discrete one. And there's some buds there, but this I think is dead. With most pines, don't be in a rush to repot too often. The more pot bound the tree, the shorter the needles get. With black pine, you always get these very long needles. And one of the reasons why people don't like black pine is because the needles are long. But if you are patient and keep the tree pot bound, but keep it fed well so that you're not starving the tree, the needles reduce very significantly. So you will get small needles or shorter needles in a much shorter space of time. So I think this is considerable improvement on what we started off with. I would probably reduce this because I think it's hiding the front, although I shouldn't be too bothered because the tree is still being trained. It's got a long way to go. And now I'm going to just refine this a little bit and make the taper a bit better. You see, I was worried about this transition from a thick trunk to a thinner apex, so I'm transitioning like this. This will become a branch eventually. I'll open it out, and then the taper will be better. So this is what I'm going to use as the front of the tree. This may eventually be sacrificed as a sacrificial, the one at the back. So what was a very difficult tree, I've now given it some line to it. So I'll leave it for now like this. And I've already shortened the growing tips, so you will get bud back over here. Who knows, anyone else may still find a different option to this tree. So that very difficult one I have resolved like this. There is, okay, let us see. I don't want to find trees which are too easy to do. I'll just show you what I mean by it. Now this one is not too difficult. There is a visible apex there, I think. These are branches here. There's a very nice line there. That is not too difficult a one. I'm not sure if I have time to do all of them. I'm trying to find one which is not so obvious. Now this is a rather gangly one. Let's see how we can improve this one. So So this tree has, again, interesting S shape, which was shaped when very young. If you wanted the easy option, you could make this the leader. Forget that one at the back, so you get a tree like that. So that's one solution. But if you want a taller tree, you will have to use this one and just bend this and create more of a interesting twist. When you're running a commercial nursery, you've got to think of what will sell more easily. So if I can put this commercial hat on, my thinking that if you make the tree taller, the customers perceive it as a bigger tree, and therefore commercially you will get more money for a taller tree than a shorter tree. But aesthetically, it may not be the best solution. In my thinking, I think if you kept the tree like that as a short tree, this is a natural line. That would look much better. But if I keep it a tall tree, the punter will think, I'm getting a bigger tree, you know, there's more tree for your money. So that I always have to balance very carefully in my mind as to how I design the tree. So, okay, let me put my commercial hat on and go for the taller tree solution, although that may not be the ideal solution. Now, if someone had bought this tree at this stage and went on to refine it, then it's their problem, what they choose to do with it. But since this tree is in my care, and I have to sell it, I've got to think in terms of what will sell more easily. And I know from experience, a larger, slightly larger or taller tree would sell more easily. So I'm going to keep the height and just make the tree more interesting. I shouldn't be revealing all these commercial or these trade secrets that we have. After all, we have to survive, and in order to survive, we've got to sell. But we also make things artistic, so don't worry. So I'm going to wire these two branches, side branch and the leader. So I judge how much to leave on either side. So the first thing is to do is to give an anchor. Once I have an anchor, then I can wire the whole of the other branch, which is not anchored yet. Okay, so I've anchored this. Now I'll go on to wire the potential apex of the tree. Now pines have this habit of creating the spoke wheel effect. Can you see the wall of branches here? How many have we got? We've got 2, 3, 5, 7 branches here. 7 of them. So you don't need all of them. So we got to decide which we will remove and which we will keep. You see all these buds here. You see, they bud back. So next year that will become a new branch. And you see what I did here? I cut that tip off, and it produced all these shoots here. Perfect length. And this one. No, perhaps I should take it to the top one. No, I don't know. Again, perfect length. Judging the correct length of wire is useful because then you don't waste so much wire. I have people who come on my class and they waste so much wire. They leave oodles of wire and then that wire is not used, that end. You see, the angle of planting is quite important. If you get the angle right, then that's half the problem solved. Now there are plenty branches there, so I'll probably cut it there and hope it'll bud back there. Now there's a twin there. I will keep this. See, even with pines you can get what you call inverse taper. Let me just show you what has happened here. You see all those little dead ends, they were branches at one point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And because they were kept at one point, it's made this swell up here. So the inverse taper happens when you have too many branches growing from the same point. So this is one case in point. If you have too many there, you will get an inverse taper at that point. So removing the branches that you won't need is quite important at this stage. Okay. Incidentally, black pine are very easy to grow from seed. If you get good seed, there are seed companies that sell black pine seeds. Unfortunately, we can't manage to develop our own black pine seeds because we don't have long enough summers to ripen the cones. I know white pine seeds we managed to get, but not black pine seed. Okay, I'm going to wire this and that, so I'm going to go up the trunk. Oh, I did a bit of untidy wiring. See, this line is quite interesting, but I can't see the beautiful curve, so I'm forced to use this as the front. So as you can see, I've used the entire length of the tree. I haven't taken the leader out to go for the short tree solution. Keep plucking the needles where I can. These long straggly branches can always be zigzagged to make it more compact, and there you are. They then can wire these out. Let me just do that as well to complete it. So very quickly, there you are at this angle. We've got a more saleable tree, an interesting line. You see there's a curve right through the trunk. This part from here to there was dead straight. I've given it some curve, and I've hardly removed anything. That's all I removed from the entire tree. So that's another difficult one to solve. I could go on and on, but I can't take up too much of the video time. So as and when I want to, I will produce a few more. So I hope you've enjoyed this session.